Hello world, UB here, and today we're going to talk about how I did a color in and cut out kind of craft project that you can do on your own from Beastie and Bone. So let's get started. So I bought this moth kit from Beastie and Bone, and basically it shows you how to color in each of the pieces of this lunar moth. And then you can cut it out and put it together so that it looks like an actual moth that you can mount up on your wall, etc., etc. I'll show you a little bit more of that in a minute here, but basically I decided to use markers even though the recommended medium is colored pencils, but I think it turned out really well. I really enjoy these brush tip markers and how they're able to blend, which I'll show you a little bit of when we get to the green portions of the moth. You can also do it in any medium that you want. And essentially what this kit is, you print this out and it gives you the coloring page that you can color directly onto, but it also gives you all of the instructions. You don't necessarily need to print out the instructions, but because I was away from my computer and I was using my phone to film, I did that. Some tips that I can give you when using this kit or any of the kits that Beastie and Bone offers include printing the coloring page on a higher density paper, so like a cardstock or something like that will work a lot better than printer paper. I did use a cardstock for this filming, so you can kind of see how it takes on the ink, etc., etc. And also don't be afraid to blend your colors together. It does feel a little bit color by numbers, but it's really pretty when you're able to go back in and blend things kind of like you can see I did here. Usually one of these brush tip marker sets will come with a blending marker, which basically just has a clear ink in it that lets you blend the inks together, and that's more or less what I used for a lot of this. I also used some lighter colors to blend in the greens and the yellows to the white parts of the moth. So you'll see in a little bit here that I used a light blue to kind of blend in the more feathery parts of the moth wing, and then I also used the clear blending brush on top of that. This could also be very easily achieved with colored pencils by just not pressing as hard on the colored pencil and blending that way. But really, this is a very fun project, especially if you're crafty. It's low cost. It's a good activity if you have, say, kids or something like that, where they can color in the moth and make it themselves. Of course, you can use whatever mediums you need to make the activity safe for them. I really enjoyed doing this, and basically what Beastie and Bone does is they are a creator who is very concerned with conservation. They do their own paper taxidermy, which is essentially what this is, but they do it from scratch, and then they put together these little kits that you can do at home with all of the instructions and everything. The idea is that some of these species have gone extinct or are going extinct, etc., etc., and Stacia at Beastie and Bone, she basically makes taxidermies of them that are different layers of paper, like what this is going to be at the end. And then she mounts them and sells them as individual pieces, but of course you can go on her website and buy one of these really cheap kits and make one yourself. And I think that's really cool. I thought that my audience, being a little bit craftier, would really enjoy that sort of thing, and honestly in the future I wouldn't be against maybe doing some reviews of other artsy kit products. So if you have any that you're curious about that you don't want to spend the money on, please put them in the comments and I will see if I can maybe do the testing for you. This was honestly a very simple project. I really just started with the yellows and moved through each color to make sure that I didn't miss anything. You can see here all of the color colors that I used to either do the main portion or blend. And if you want to basically do the same exact thing as I did, you're very welcome to. But once it's all colored out, all you do is cut all of the pieces out, and then there are instructions that come with this that tell you in what order to put each piece. And wherever you see X's on the moth parts is basically where you're going to be gluing things together. So that's where you can kind of put your little dots of glue as you go. Beastie and Bone recommends doing nori glue, and I didn't have any, so I actually used contact cement. That's not going to be my go-to going forward, and I would trust that nori glue would work great. Obviously, you could also just use a glue stick or white glue or whatever you have on hand to make this happen for you. Beastie and Bone is a conservation and environmentally conscious creator, and I would like to follow in her footsteps going forward. That is going to be one of the things that you'll notice will be changing on my channel a little bit, is I'll be talking a little bit more about the environmental impact of the materials that I'm using, and I'll be trying to test out different materials that could replace the very environmentally bad materials that I've used in the past, such as resins, clays, etc. With all that being said, cutting out these little pieces of the moth can be a little bit tricky, and it might be good if you're doing this with kids to have an adult cut out these smaller parts. But for the most part, you can cut them all out pretty easily. It's just the more feathery bits that are a little bit more finicky. And then, you know, I didn't really want to show you the gluing process, but maybe if you snap 3 times, it'll come together for you too. I really had fun putting this together. I did. It didn't take long to dry because it's contact cement, you know. And once I had everything together, you're supposed to bend it in a couple different ways just to make it have a little bit more life. And moths' wings will kind of bend in different directions anyway. So for instance, the bottom layers kind of bend down to create the body of the moth, and the top layers kind of bend up so that there's a little space between the top wings and the bottom wings. And I think that's a really cute touch that Beastie and Bone added into their instructions. It really gives this moth some life. Now, if you wanted more details in your moth, I would definitely say do colored pencils. I originally was going to do this in more than one medium, but it turned out really well here, and I mounted it up on a round piece of wood with some moss and some flowers and some stones, and I think it turned out really great. It hangs in my computer room now, and I've just really been enjoying having it hanging out there. So, you know, this is a great value. I really enjoyed it. I think kids would enjoy it. I think anybody crafty would enjoy it. And it didn't take a whole lot of my time. It maybe took a couple of hours. With all that being said, thank you so much for tuning in. I want to first off shout out Beastie and Bone. You can find this kit and a number of other kits at beastieandbone.com. This isn't sponsored, but I did want to shout out and give some love to another creator. That's another theme that hopefully you'll be seeing a little bit more of on the channel going forward. I know you got to the end of the video. I'm going to give you 1,000 experience points. That's very, very appreciated. So those are just for you. And I want to shout out my patrons, Mark, Nathaniel, Twyla, and Liam. You guys are rock stars, and I am so grateful for your support. Don't forget to drink some water, and I will talk to you guys again soon. Peace.